Today, I want to talk about a book, Switch. It's published 8 years ago. The reason why I want to talk about it today is because this book changed the way I approach business problems. Changed the way I even approach regular problems. It's by the Heath brothers, Chip and Dan Heath. They're actually some of my favorite authors. I want to tell you what I learned. I want to explain how it matters to you. Hey, I'm Derek Halpern. You're watching Planet Derek, the place entrepreneurs come to get ahead in business and in life. And one of the things we believe here is the power of self-education. Most people stop learning after they're done with college, and they proceed to just take everything they learned in college and believe it the rest of their life. I remember this one time I got into an argument with a coworker when I worked at the corporation. I lasted like 2 years there, but whatever. I got into an argument, and they wanted to correct a memo that I was sending out. Like I was typed up this memo and they wanted to give me some advice. And they said, oh, Derek, well, you gotta put 2 spaces after the period because that's how it works. And I'm like sitting there, I was like, well, actually, no. You don't have to put 2 spaces after the period. That's an outdated rule that you learned back in the 1930s when you went to college. And then we got into a little bit of an argument. I know why you're laughing right now, but that's literally what happened. Then we got into an argument. She's like, listen, it's 2 spaces after the period. That's the right way. I was like, well, actually, 2 spaces after the period was created because typewriters had a mono spacing issue where it would make the sentences blur together. We don't have that anymore with modern computers. Got into an argument, and then she eventually ended up telling me, he goes, yo, you young kids say, you're always trying to change everything. Well, this is the problem. Most people learn things in college and they never learn anything again. Here, we believe in the power of self-education. That's why we read books. This book, I read it back when it came out in 2010. It's one of the best books I ever read. Why? It's called Switch, How to Change Things When Change is Hard. Pretty sure that's what the subtitle says. I'm not wearing glasses or contacts right now, and I'm basically blind because my eyes hurt. But anyway, this is the book. What did I learn in this book? This book is about how to get people to change their minds. Whether it's coming from the top down in an organization, whether it's coming from a persuasion standpoint. It's all about getting people to change their minds. That's not why I love this book, though. The reason why I love this book is because they told a story about someone who worked for Save the Children, and he was tasked with trying to figure out how to solve malnutrition in Vietnam, this one town in specific. And what was interesting is they presented him with all this data, a lot of different statistics and data about that area. And he called this data true but useless, meaning, all right, that's great data, it's all true but useless to me. And this is when he came up with a different idea. He said, if we really want to solve this malnutrition problem in this Vietnamese city, what you need to do is you need to look for people in that city that did not have a malnutrition problem in their kids. So they started scouring the city for people, and they found some. They found some kids that were doing well. And this is when he noticed some differences. He noticed that the kids who weren't malnourished, one, they ate different types of foods. Second, the parents would force feed the kid. Not like force feed the kid, but like they would make the kid eat. One of the things that people thought in Vietnam was that children would know when to eat more, when they needed to eat more. However, the kids who were not malnourished, their parents would actively feed them, even as much as hand feeding them, just so they knew that they were getting the right amount of food. Now this might seem trivial, and it might seem true but useless to you. But here's why this is interesting. He then realized that they can take what these families were doing over here and working and apply it to the other families over here. And it turns out that it was completely possible. And doing so allowed them to help address the malnutrition problem. There was actually an added benefit they talked about in the book too. The added benefit is that when you go to somewhere else, whether you're entering a new company, if you're a consultant and you're going into a new company, or if you're starting a new job, if you're the new kid on the block, right? Any new idea, like, hey, it's actually only 1 space after the period, not 2, will be seen with resentment. This idea of finding what was working in the community and then spreading it actually cures what they call the not invented here bias. The not invented here bias is like, well, you know, I don't want the outsider opinion. I want to do how we do. So that cures it. This whole idea is known as bright spots. Instead of looking at the mass amounts of data that depicts the things that you don't want, the true but useless information, you should look for the bright spots in the world. See what they're doing differently and see if you can replicate it. Now what's interesting is, this is how I've approached much of my life. By now you probably know that when I grew up poor. My mom was on welfare, my dad was in jail, basically my whole life. I was surrounded by other drug addicts who would steal money from my mom. Things were pretty bad, but I was able to break free. And one of the reasons why I was able to do that is because I did not let myself become a statistic. I didn't want to be that kid that dropped out of high school because I had a broken family. I didn't want to be that kid that didn't amount to nothing. So I tried to find people who had nothing and became something, and I used them as inspiration. I was looking for the bright spots. This should motivate you too. But more than self-motivation, it's actually a good business decision. Let me give you an example. By now you know that I talk about my hair. It's not that I'm vain, right? I did a video about so I got a $310 haircut, and I've since done a few different haircut videos. The reason why I did that was because one day I was reading through my survey responses at Social Triggers, and I noticed that a hairstylist asked me a question. She said, Derek, I really love your blog. I feel like I want to do this for hairstyling for my salon. Do you have any tips? And I was like, oh, why is a hairstylist reading my blog? According to me, I thought all my bloggers were bloggers trying to be bloggers. I didn't realize there were people like hairstylists or massage therapists or brick and store food owners. I had one pet food store. They were all different types of people. And mind you, they were isolated people. They were bright spots. There was one hairstylist, one massage therapist. Those bright spots gave me new avenues for growth. It allowed me to branch out my audience into new groups of people by focusing on the bright spots. I could have looked at the data. I could have said 9 out of 10 people on my email list are bloggers who are trying to start online businesses, and that would have been true, but useless. Instead, by looking at bright spots, the standouts, the people who were here that didn't make any sense, that created new growth opportunities for me. Again, by focusing on bright spots. Now, I know this book is about change, and I highly suggest you read that book. Great book. But just this idea of bright spots is important because you have bright spots in your business. Maybe you have 9 people that failed doing something and 1 person that didn't. Talk to the person that did and see what they did different. Maybe you're curious about where your new customers are going to come from. Stop thinking about your customer base as who you think they are. Look at your customer base. Who does not fit in here? Who does not fit in, and why are they here? See if you can get more people like him. The same is true for building your email list. Let's say you're trying to build an email list, you get 2,000 to 3,000 people. You might think, oh, well, my email list is primarily this group of people. It's primarily that group of people because that's who you focused on attracting. There's probably 1, 2, 5, 15, 30 people that are standouts. Go find more of those people. Use the bright spots, and you won't regret it. Right now, what I want you to do, leave a comment below this video and let me know how you plan on using this idea of bright spots to broaden your reach. Like the video, subscribe to my channel, see you tomorrow.